Right, folks, this is a new podcast from the two Mikes, and I'm going to give you old energy boy, MG, to introduce it.
Yeah, we've edited out all the nonsense from Mike Parry, so it might be a bit shorter than usual. This is TalkSport Extra Time. We are the two Mikes, and I'm delighted to say it's that time of the morning to say a very warm welcome to Mr. Mike Parry. Very good morning to you, Mr. Parry.
A very warm welcome to you as well, Mike.
Thank you.
It's great to be here, but I have to say, I'm utterly banjaxed and perplexed
Are you?
at the idea that you're going to give me a test,
Yes.
a quiz on journalism.
Well, this was the chosen subject that we picked yesterday,
no,
wasn't
it wasn't. I had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, you said you'd do a quiz on journalism.
No.
It's your subject of your life, isn't it?
You came in on the blind side on that one. I mean, for instance, if I was John Lennon sitting here now,
yes,
which I can't because unfortunately John Lennon was murdered
No
by a
longer with
maniac
us.
in
Yes.
1980,
That's
God
right.
rest his soul, would you say, I tell you what, John, we'll give you a quiz on music?
Well, why not?
No, it's ludicrous. It's mad. If your milkman was sitting here now, would you give the milkman
got
a
a
quiz
milkman.
on milk and pints of milk and how to drive a milk float and all that? Are you
If
mad?
that was his
Are you
chosen
mad?
area of expertise.
I think you're off your rocker.
You've been a journalist for many, many decades.
Yes.
Not
Many decades, for some decades.
Some decades.
Trying to make out I'm some sort of antediluvian.
No, I'm saying you're
wreck
you would be
or something.
described as a veteran journalist, somebody
Veteran?
who...
I'm not a veteran, I'm experienced.
You're very experienced, and you've been at the peak of your profession in various different roles in the media world.
And anyway, the
I'm
questions...
thinking this will give you a great chance to get a very, very high score. As Jason Cundy said, probably 9 out of 10. It's very possible.
Yeah, well, you know, the audience, the listeners, the people who follow us are very, very aware now of the way you manipulate these things, to the extent where gerrymandering has almost become the third person in the quiz.
It has entered the language.
Okay.
I heard Nigel Farage was being interviewed by Andrew Marr on Sunday.
Yeah.
He actually used the phrase
Did he?
gerrymandering, but he
Yeah.
wasn't being given a quiz, though.
Well, you know, I'm a bit wary of it, but we'll get to the quiz later on.
We will, a little bit later on.
Listen, just before we get going, I'll tell you what, this is fantastic. Paul Scholes does a column in the Independent newspaper every Friday morning, and of course, we're lucky enough to have those papers in front of us right
Yes.
now. He asked the question, and I tell you what, Mike, this is something that I have been thinking about for a decade. He says, quite simply, I've never seen the point of lambasting the fourth official. After all, what can he do?
Right.
Don't you agree with that?
Yeah, that is a good point. I
Yeah,
suppose
it's a
the
very good
reason
point.
the reason the fourth official gets lambasted, as you say, is because he's the guy that's closest to the person doing the lambasting, presumably.
In football terms, he is the Pope, isn't he? You know what I mean?
How's he the Pope?
Well, the reason the fourth official is the Pope is because he's the referee's representative on Earth.
I see what you mean.
You see what I mean?
Yes.
You know. I mean, if you wanted to have a consultation with God on Earth, you couldn't go to God,
right,
but you might be able to go to the Pope.
You might be able to get in there.
So
yeah.
if you want a consultation with the referee at a football match, you can't. You know, if you're the manager, you can't storm onto the pitch and go and have a consultation with the referee. So you actually go to the fourth official.
But the fourth official can't actually get you to the referee, though, can he?
Well, the fourth official has
so he's more like an assistant.
No, he has ear-based communication facilities.
Ear-based communication facilities.
to talk to the ref.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the manager hopes he's influencing the fourth official, who will then get onto his electronic communication system, wrapped around his head and stuck in his ear and talk to the ref.
But that's precisely why Paul Scholes is making the point, because presumably that hardly ever happens. You never see a fourth official communicate with the ref anything other than, if this carries on, we're going to have to send this guy off to the stands.
No, I totally agree with that, you know, I totally agree. But I suppose, like all frustrations in life, when you've got a frustration...
You take it out on the person nearest to you.
You take it out on the easiest target around you. That's what you do.
I don't have any frustrations in life.
Yes, I've seen you take it out on waiters and waitresses. Not waitresses, but
you've
certainly
never,
waiters
no,
and
you've
barmen.
never seen me giving people a hard time.
Well, I won't go into it, but there were one or
I'm
two
much more likely
examples.
to give people a hard time that I know very well, as opposed to people that I don't know very well.
Well, who gave you the famous quote? Give me not the man who can stand up to his enemies, give me the man who can stand up to his friends.
Yeah.
Who was that?
I don't know, but you've mentioned it before.
Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So.
I had a bit of an encounter with somebody very rude, actually, on the tube today.
Oh,
somebody
yeah, go on, tell me what happened.
I was just getting off the tube, and as you do, you normally wait for people to get off, and then you
Yes.
let everybody else then gets on. This guy did one of the most annoying things you can do.
What
and
is
he
it?
kind of put his head down and just rushed onto the train.
No.
Through me and two other people.
Almost
who
like
were
a
trying-
sort of headbutting.
Yeah, almost.
Yeah,
and after that conversation about the man slamming that we had the other night, I just kind of lowered my shoulder a bit and just bumped into him very, very hard.
Well done.
And just sort of said to him in a very loud voice, why don't you just wait for everybody to get off?
Yeah, exactly.
And he just scurried in and sat down.
Yeah,
So unfortunately, there was no kind of violent encounter or anything like that.
OK, now talking about that, by the way, there are some developments here on the dog napping, OK?
Oh, there are, yes.
I'm telling you now, you won't believe it. I had a conversation with you last night
You
about
remember the
dog
vet
napping.
who rang in and sort of poo-pooed your idea?
Well, I was a bit sickened by that vet because, you know, he tried to make me look foolish by dismissing my ideas of chips and all that. By the way, do you see the Danish company that are putting chips in the arms of their employees?
No, I didn't see that.
Right, this is on the BBC News this evening. I don't normally watch the BBC News. I've normally got things that I have to do.
Yes.
But a company in Denmark are putting chips into the arms of their employees.
Really?
So you know, like when we come into TalkSport Towers, we have a card which you flash over.
A security device.
A security device which opens the doors and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They don't need one now. They've got a chip in their arm. Seriously.
That sounds ridiculous.
And they go
and
to
they've agreed to do this?
They go to the canteen at lunchtime. They order their, what do we have downstairs? Ravioli and chips and all that kind of stuff.
It's never open when we're here. I don't know what they have.
It's not, but you don't pay for it anymore. You just move your chip in your arm over a scanner and it all taking out your wages.
That sounds ridiculous.
Well, you say
Surely that's some kind of invasion of your human rights.
You say that, but I mean, what I'm saying is...
What happens when you get fired? Do they have to go and dig it out of your arm?
Yeah, they have to take it out, and what I'm saying is that my forward-looking vision of chippery and putting them into people's...
Ravioli and chippery.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I'm putting them into... First of all, dog skulls, and then human skulls. You should be doing that.
The vet told you that we can't do it into skulls. Lots of people on Twitter today actually were sending pictures of their very worried-looking dogs. Saying, this is my dog after what he's heard Mr. Parry wants to do to him.
No, what the vet was doing was having a real laugh at my expense, trying to make out that I was some sort of an idiot. But anyway, the reason we're talking dogs is I've discovered in a piece of research today that organised gangs of dog nappers are going around and indicating to other gangs of dog nappers, because it's so organised, houses where they think a suitable kidnapping victim is available.
Shocking, isn't it?
And they do things like they put chalk crosses on the gatepost or the walls and all this kind of stuff. I mean, this is very sinister.
Quite sophisticated.
This is very sinister.
I'm still not clear about why they're doing it. I mean, there's a story here that I've got in front of me saying 6 people arrested over the theft of a £16,000 puppy, which was a rare lilac bulldog puppy.
I know.
Incredible amount of money for a dog.
I
mean, presumably you couldn't then just resell a puppy that was that rare and that valuable without arousing some kind of suspicion. I mean, who would buy it?
Well, it might go overseas. That's why they steal exotic cars in London. True. They then wrench off the steering wheel, put it on the other side of the front of the car, then send it overseas.
Well,
don't
they might not do that with the steering wheel, but they certainly send them overseas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I mean, the other thing I suppose people have said that they're doing it for is for fighting. They put these dogs into dog fights and that kind of thing.
I can't bear the thought
horrendous.
of that. Imagine
Absolutely
if you were
horrendous.
kidnapped on your way home, and when you woke up, you were actually in the Colosseum, and there was a line coming towards you, because that's the equivalent of dog baiting and dog fighting. It's disgusting. I'd kill anybody who did that to a dog. Right. I mean, I wouldn't kill them because that's a criminal offence, but I'd find a baseball bat.
You'd certainly want to punish them.
I'd want to break their legs in 3 places to make sure they never walked again.
You don't want to be talking about too much violence.
Well, no, we don't like violence.
I'll tell you something else that's going on in the countryside as well, is that foxes are becoming, as we know, very, very sort of... very tame in London, very sort of...
unbelievable.
Very, very brazen, coming right up to you.
I was having a conversation with your daughter yesterday. She said they're in Kensington. You see foxes
they're everywhere.
In Soho and Kensington.
They're all over the place. I always see a couple on the way into work, a couple on the way home. But they're now apparently attacking car brakes because they like the taste of rubber.
Well, do you know where this came from? Funny you should say this. I've done a study on the urban fox. I believe the urban fox to be a very great threat to civilization.
Yes.
And what happens is, because they can't get food anymore, because all the food now goes into the wheelie bins, right? And the foxes can't get into the wheelie bins.
They can jump up on them and turn them over, though, can't they?
Well, sometimes, but I'm not sure they're all that clever. What Mother Fox does in about 2 months' time, when the little foxes get born, she goes and steals Wellingtons. Do you keep your Wellingtons outside? I
do, actually, yeah.
Right, OK, steal Wellingtons, drags it away, and then the foxes, who haven't had any food because they've just been born, start eating the Wellingtons. They then think that the Wellington boot, the rubber boot, is normal food.
Is their sustenance.
It's sustenance. So when they go scurrying off then, they go underneath cars, and they suddenly find the same compound, rubber, wrapped around brake pipes, and they eat through them. And they're going to cause a fatal accident one of these days. People have already found out in the country their brakes have been severed by the gnawing of foxes on the rubber pipes.
How bizarre.
Yeah.
Sounds like a very dangerous place to be.
Well, it's happening. Believe me, it's happening. These things happen, Mike. And the thing is, you go through life really with your eyes closed. Who said that, by the way?
You just said it.
Yeah, but who said it originally?
I don't know. Was it Franklin D. Roosevelt?
Living is easy with eyes closed.
Oh, a Beatles song, isn't it?
John Lennon, Strawberry Fields, the greatest Beatles song ever. And it wasn't Franklin D. Roosevelt, you oaf!
Yeah,
Franklin D. Roosevelt made quotes about, don't give me the man who can stand up to his enemies.
Yeah,
give me the man who can stand up...
Yeah, well, you started forgetting things in the last 5 minutes already.
No, I thought I'd give you it again.
Maybe we can find that quote, by the way.
Anyway, look, we've got a lot to talk about tonight. Are we going to be talking to Sandra down in...
We are talking to 600 down
Loads
in Australia.
of stuff going on in Oz.
We're going to talk about our trip to Crystal Palace as well, which is taking place tomorrow. Crystal Palace against Everton.
My old pal Simon Jordan was in this very studio just a couple of hours ago.
Did you happen to see him on the way in?
No, and I was so disappointed that the boys didn't ask him about the visit that Mr. Brazil and I made to Crystal Palace to...
When you were thrown out.
Well, we were escorted out by a load of henchmen who his brother brought in to discipline us, but in fact, the henchmen were all laughing at the people running the club and gave us a lift home in one of their cars. They all had leather coats on, leather gloves and all that, but...
So do you think he would have been pleased to see you, Simon, then, if you'd seen him?
Well, I don't know. He's got this weird view of myself and Alan Brazil having, been explosively rude to people on that night. In fact, we weren't. We just made a joke about Simon and his flossy hair and the fact that he was a mobile phone mogul, and I sung that little song, remember?
Yeah.
Do you want to hear it again?
No, I don't want to hear it again.
Sure?
No,
when
I'm very
Simon's
sure.
on his phone?
No, I told you I didn't want to hear it.
When he's on his own, Simon makes love to telephones, eager as a beaver.
Why can you just not take no for an answer?
Anyway, I thought I might see him tonight, but he scuttled off before I got here. He must have known I was coming in. I was very disappointed the boys didn't ask him about the, enduring friendship between Simon Jordan and the Porkmeister.
Quite right, too. Now, lots more coming up. It is a quiz night, of course, as well, and you know what to do. You can follow us at the 2 Mikes. We've got loads of tweets and texts to read out on the Andy Murray front as well. This is Talk Sport. This is Talk Sport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham. He is Mike Parry. Together we are the 2 Mikes. There will be yet another podcast, the 4th of the week, coming out in a few hours' time, of course. Very exciting weekend, not just for us going to Crystal Palace, Everton, but Manchester City at Chelsea as well. And, of course, Andy Murray. You heard a lot of the callers there talking about Andy Murray. I still find it amazing that people will not accept Andy Murray as a bona fide British sporting hero.
I heard you tussling with that chap who phoned in, who tries... people who try to make... mileage now out of that one throwaway comment about the English. Ludicrous.
Right.
We all knew that was a joke years ago, and as Andy Murray said, most of his team are English. But what I find is very... I don't get the old politics of tennis. The guy who beat him in the first set in the tie-break comes off, gets to the net and says, well played, Thomas.
Right.
Talking to himself.
Yeah.
His name is Thomas.
Yeah. Well,
right?
They sometimes have to do that to kind of get themselves motivated.
That's what I mean.
Andy Murray talks to himself a lot as well, doesn't he?
So Andy Murray then starts waving his arms around, complaining to the umpire. I don't get that.
Right.
What was the perceived insult there?
Well, I don't know. I think the idea was that he was kind of somehow disrespecting Andy Murray, and that was why Kim Sears got involved as well. She's in a lot of the papers this morning for her for rather sort of...
There's a lot of grief between the
rant.
two because a coach that worked with Andy Murray left when he took on Ms. Mazzaremo.
That's her, yeah.
Who's his coach now.
Maresmo, isn't it?
Maresmo, that's the one I'm talking about. And so it was, there was a real edge to it today because, especially when the first set was won by Thomas, the other guy. But anyway, whatever happened in Andy Murray's head, it certainly worked because he went and won the second set 6-love. Yeah. So this is his 4th Australian final, isn't it?
I think it is.
But he hasn't won one yet, has he?
No, he has. He won. That was his first. Wasn't? I know. Maybe he hasn't.
No, it was US Open, wasn't it?
US Open,
and then Wimbledon,
and then Wimbledon. Yeah.
He's got a terrific record in Australia, but I think when he lost the second or third one, that's when Ivan Lendl came in and said, I lost my first 4 major finals before I won one and turned it round. Yeah. So, fingers crossed, he'll probably play Djokovic, won't he, in the final?
I would imagine so.
And is that on Saturday or Sunday?
I think it's on Sunday.
Is it? We'll find out from Sandra when she comes on, because Australia will hold its breath for that one.
Well, Djokovic has still got to play Stan Wawrinka. And I think that's later on this morning.
Expected to beat him, though, wouldn't he?
He would beat.
He
would expect that.
Yeah. And then I'd love Andy Murray to actually, to win down in Australia. It'd be fantastic. There must still be, I'm assuming, massive links between Australians and the old country, and the old country in itself being the whole of the United Kingdom, and Scotland in particular, sent a lot of people to Australia to build bridges and railways.
Well, funny enough,
the Sydney Opera House.
And a long time even before that as well, because when I was in the Tower of London the other weekend, there was all sorts of punishments made available to various people, and some of them were sent to the Tower and imprisoned for a very long time. Some of them rescued, and some of them, even back then, were sent off to Australia.
Deported?
Yeah, deported.
Transported, I think it was.
Transported to Australia,
I think
the new land.
Deported means if you're a criminal, you're thrown out. Transported, a very unpleasant journey, taking about 3 months in the bowels of a creaking ship.
Yeah, and if you manage to survive that, good luck.
Yeah, with rats running around.
Scurvy.
Gnawing at your feet, scurvy, hanging in chains from the yard arm, all that kind of stuff. Typhoons, typhoid as well.
40-foot waves.
40-foot waves. Mad natives when you stop to try and fill up with water and what's the other, pomegranates and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, pomegranates.
They fill up with pomegranates?
Yeah, they go and fill up with pomegranates to eat on board. And, of course, limes. So we got the name Limey from, obviously, to ward off the scurvy. If you then got to Australia, you were given like 50 quid, weren't you, and a patch of land and said, right, get on with it.
Yeah,
you weren't
so.
kept in a nick, were you?
No, because it was a new land and it was all about trying to sort of survive there and discover it. But of course, it was not exactly habitable for a lot of people because it was very hot. They'd never seen anything like it.
Full of snakes,
but
alligators.
They still seem to have, I mean, we'll talk to Sandra about this later because they still seem to have a strange kind of sort of love-hate relationship with the United Kingdom, don't they? Because
Definitely.
it was only the other day that Prince Philip was given a kind of honorary knighthood for
that's
Australia
right,
Day. But a lot of people want to kind of cut those ties.
Well, I think
with
Mr.
the royal
Abbott's the current Prime Minister, isn't he?
Yes.
And he's sort of pro-English or pro-British, you know, because he's a sort of right.
Well, he must be if you go Prince Philip some kind of honour.
That lady who was the Prime Minister for...
she was the Labour Party, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was a bit sort of anti, I think.
Yeah, I think she was.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we'll find all about that about Sandra. But anyway, I would love Andy Murray to conquer the world again, take his third title, because then he'll have 3 of the 4. Holy Trinity, of course, would then be the French.
Yes.
It's unlikely he'll ever win that for 2 reasons.
Because it's not his special court surface, is
it? What's it called? Clay.
Clay.
He's not good on clay, but the other thing is, as long as Nadal is around, nobody ever wins on clay except Nadal,
unless he drops out of the tournament, of course.
Exactly, which he dropped out this
Now,
one,
I've got something to remind you of.
Go
because
on.
you might remember on, I don't know if it was Monday night or even if it was sometime last week, actually.
Monday.
Yeah, actually, I think it was last week. It might have been this time last week.
Good to
You're not going to sing all the way through the show,
I just feel a bit elated because, you know, things are...
Yeah, why do you feel elated?
Well, you know, this is the 4th show of the week. Been a good set of shows.
It has.
I'm delighted the way the audience are responding by looking at our podcast each morning, which is very, very nice. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, one of the things that they've responded about as well is when you talked about, when your one regret in life was that you weren't born during the Second World War, weren't born
pilot.
to be old enough to be a Spitfire pilot. Some people have actually tweeted you the link. I don't know if you saw it.
I've seen it.
You can go and actually have an experience flying a Spitfire.
Utterly fantastic.
Now, I don't know how complicated it is. I don't know whether you actually get to control the plane
No,
itself.
I don't think so. It's a 2-seated Spitfire.
But you can pay something like 2,000 quid and go
and do it.
It's
about $2,500. You sit in the back, and funny enough, I saw a feature in the Mail on Sunday about a month ago, and it was written and performed by a lady called Sarah Oliver.
Oh, I remember her.
And I employed her one time.
She used to work at the Express,
when I was a features editor. And it was a fantastic picture, because they must have had an aeroplane flying alongside it, of her in the cockpit in the back of the Spitfire, flying past the White Cliffs of Dover. Sensational. That picture will be on her wall for the rest of her life.
Well, that's got to be something you're going to do, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm going to do it, definitely.
Are you?
And then report back and tell you about the experience. Yeah, it would be magnificent.
Well, you mustn't just report back. You must tell people when you're doing it.
Oh,
so
yeah, I will,
we can film it.
I will.
But I mean,
it won't just be, the thrill of getting a Spitfire. Yeah. It will be a deeply emotional experience for me.
Will it?
Deeply emotional about the boys, the men who gave up their life. I mean, look, I'll get serious for a minute, right? Yeah. On my walks that I go on the North Downs and the South Downs and all that kind of stuff, there's one walk that takes me through a churchyard.
Oh, yeah.
And this churchyard, I don't know why, but there are maybe 40 or 50 war graves. And you can tell a war grave because it's a very white slab.
From the Second World War?
Yeah, from the Second World War. The War Graves Commission have gone around renewing all these over the last few years.
Right.
So they're in pristine condition, very white slab. And if it's an RF pilot, they have the RF emblem on. If it's the Army, they have the Army emblem, Navy, and so on. A lot of them are RAF pilots, and it breaks your heart because
they're so young.
They're all between 19 and 23. And they all from their family saying, lost to God in defence of his country and all that kind of stuff. It's heartbreaking to think that those boys so selflessly said, oh, well, I'll give up university and I'll become a Spitfire pilot for my country. My dad did the same thing. When my dad was 17, instead of going to university from the Birkenhead Institute, he joined up and he set sail. He
was at D-Day, wasn't he?
Well, he was on D-Day, but his first ship left from Liverpool, the Ascanius. But 4 years later, he joined in 1940. He set sail on D-Day from a part of the south coast, which I can see from the balcony of my flat in Gosport. That's one of the reasons why I live there. Right. It's a terribly touching thing and all that. We'll never know about it. But, I mean, getting into a Spitfire cockpit might actually bring some of the reality of what it was all about to me. So, I'm definitely going to do that, and I'm grateful to you for pointing it out.
Good. Well, don't get too upset when you're up there,
I won't get
because
upset.
we will want to record it and put it out there
absolutely.
on the old 2 Mike TV channel. Now, there's lots of other stuff coming up throughout the course of the night as well. And what do you make of the whole Diego Costa thing? I want to ask you about that, because he might get away with this, mightn't he?
Do you know what? Only one man in his head knows whether it was deliberate or non-deliberate when his foot landed on another player's leg.
But that's why you have courts, and that's why you have of judges, and that's why you have the FA panel, because presumably they'll have to decide.
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is the difference between this and a court of law is usually in a court of law you have other sort of evidence.
Yeah.
Witnesses, forensic evidence,
right.
DNA, you see what I mean? And experts who can say, well, the behaviour of the defendant was all this.
Right.
This is just one man in one moment performing a physical act which now independent people have got to decide, was this in fact a deliberate physical assault or was it not?
Yeah. And what do you think it was?
Well, I don't think you can say 100%. If it was a jury, and a jury's got to be 100% convinced of guilt...
Yeah, but it's not a jury, is it?
No, it's not a jury. So what I'm saying, if it was a jury, you couldn't convict because you can't be absolutely sure it was a deliberate intent.
Yeah, I think it'd be astonishing if he ends up not getting a ban, because everybody who has seen it would say, well, he's quite lucky, fortunate not to have been charged with 2 of the offences.
I agree.
And quite fortunate.
If I was on the panel, I would do him, because I personally think that he was of malcontent.
Yeah.
Or malintent.
Of malintent.
Yeah.
Now, when we go to Crystal Palace and Everton, remember last year it was a 0-0 draw. Yeah. Is this going to be Everton's comeback, do you think?
Well, I hope so.
It's not been great. You've been pretty miserable about Everton.
I hope that with it sort of being a new year, I mean, no, it's not New Year because we've gone out the FA Cup in the new year, but it's New Year Premier League.
New Year, post-New Year.
Yeah, I'm saying that, the season starts here and hopefully we'll make a run right up the table, starting at Crystal Palace on Saturday. But you couldn't have a worse team to face at the moment. You've got a rejuvenated Crystal Palace under their new manager, Alan Pardew, who my old mate Simon Jordan was heaping praise on tonight, saying he's the man for the job. Yeah. So it's going to be a very tough game.
I think it is going to be a very tough game. It might be another miserable time for you, I'm afraid, but we will have a very good time, I'm sure, down there. Lots more to come. This is Talk Sport Extra Time. We are the 2 Mikes, and of course, it is quiz night. The special subject for Mr. Parry is journalism. We'll find out just how much he knows about it coming up very shortly. This is Talk Sport.
Bet.
This is TalkSport Extra Time. I'm Mike Graham. He is Mike Parry. There will be a podcast coming out in a few hours' time, of course. And here's a tweet from Dylan who says, what do you get when you cross Mike Parry with a dinosaur? He says, Jurassic Pork.
Jurassic Pork.
Have you not heard that one before?
I've not heard that one before. Well done. That's a joke. We like jokes on this show. If we didn't, we wouldn't have old MG in the studio.
Yeah, very funny.
Very
funny. Actually, there's a story about a dinosaur coming up this week. Did you see the story about the... what do you mean amazing? I haven't told you what it is yet.
I know what it is, because I'm on top of things. They're taking the dinosaur out of the Natural History Museum and replacing it with a whale.
Yeah, exactly. Have you ever been to the Natural History Museum?
Yes, probably.
Probably?
Yeah, probably.
Because you told me you'd never been to the Victoria and Albert Museum a while ago.
Yeah,
I'm sure everybody's been to the Natural History Museum.
But listen, I never got dinosaurs. When my nephew Tom, who's now a grown adult man, was about 7, he was mad on dinosaurs. He had dinosaur models and toys and things all over his bedroom, all over the house and all that. And I could never get why kids were into dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are ugly, horrible, predatory killers who stalked the earth during the caveman's time.
Well, not during the caveman's time, actually.
Of course
they weren't around when cavemen were around.
Of course they were, you fool.
What makes you think that?
Haven't you seen 1,000 Years BC starring Raquel Welch?
1,000, isn't it? 1,000,000 years BC.
1,000,000 years, sorry, that's right. Yeah, 1,000,000 years BC starring Raquel Welch.
Yeah.
I mean, she had to fight off dinosaurs.
Well, they were in the Flintstones as well. It doesn't mean it actually happened.
Well, listen, I'm telling you, mate, I know these things. Wasn't Ringo Starr in that film as well? Was that another one?
I don't think so.
Ringo Starr starred in some film, right, where I think the sole bit of dialogue he had to...
what was he, a caveman?
He was a caveman,
really?
and his whole dialogue was... And then somebody said something to him, and he went... and then somebody said... Something else to him, and he went... and he was wrapped in sort of furs and all this kind of stuff, and then he ran off. Yeah, that was... I've seen that
Apparently
film.
he was in a film called Caveman.
Oh, there you go, Caveman,
Caveman.
Well, there you are, that's Caveman.
Well, who was he talking to? Presumably one of them must have been slightly more advanced than him if they were saying something else.
I'm not sure, but I mean, I'm sure there were dinosaurs.
Doesn't sound like a classic, does it? Really?
No, it doesn't. But I'm sure there were dinosaurs in that film. But there were certainly dinosaurs in Raquel Welch's film.
There may well have been dinosaurs in all sorts of films.
Any film Raquel Welch is in, you actually don't remember who else is in it, do you? Because she's so good to look at. You know, certainly, well, she is these days, when she was in her prime. Yes, most stunning woman. Probably one of the most beautiful women that's ever been born.
I interviewed her once on the phone.
Raquel Welch?
Yeah, I did.
You?
Which was one of the great moments of my journalistic career.
I bet it was.
Do you remember when they first had call waiting in America?
Yes.
And, you could get another call coming in, which, of course, now everybody has.
Right, yeah.
But we didn't used to have it over here then, and I was amazed by this. And I was talking, actually, to somebody in London, and I'd put this interview request in to talk to her about something which wasn't particularly important. And I was talking to somebody on the Times business news desk, funny enough, and the little phone went beep like that, and I answered it, and I was like, oh, hello. And it was like, hi, can I speak to Mike Graham? And I was like, yeah, this is he. And she went, this is Raquel Welch here. And I nearly, fell over.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Why would she ring you herself?
Well, because I was interviewing her on the phone.
Yeah,
and I was working from home at
what
that
about?
time.
What about?
It was about a makeup thing. I can't remember. It was some magazine story I was doing.
Yeah, yeah.
But I was able to do the great thing, which is go back to the guy at the time and say, look, I'm terribly sorry, I've got to go. I've got Raquel Welch on the other phone.
Yeah, that's fantastic, isn't it? What a great line.
Amazing.
And did you...
She was very, very nice.
Was she?
Yeah.
And did you ever pursue the idea of meeting her face-to-face?
No, I didn't, no.
Oh, you should have.
Well, it wasn't really like that. It wasn't like me sort of having a chance to chat her up, but she was very charming on the phone.
There was an astonishing link between her and this country because her son married Freddie Truman's daughter,
That's
didn't
right.
he?
And do you remember when she turned up for the wedding?
She outdid the bride.
She did.
And everybody got very upset because she turned up in a figure-hugging, low-cut dress.
Yeah, it was red, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, looking like Raquel Welch, if you know what I mean.
Amazingly, because
more
she
like
is
Raquel Welch than Raquel Welch. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's, I mean, there's no question of her hiding her light under a bushel or
No,
anything like that.
certainly not.
She just, she got to the forefront of it, and she was excellent. So why are we talking about Raquel Welch again?
Well, we were talking about dinosaurs.
Oh, dinosaurs, that's right, yeah. And I never saw this fascination. I thought, ugly damn beasts that, went around massacring things. And I suppose we have to believe, do we, that they were wiped out when a meteorite hit the Earth.
That seems to be the genuine theory.
How
that
else
people
could we have
go
got
with.
rid of them? They're so big and powerful and strong, yeah? Yeah.
But you don't find that period of history fascinating?
Not at all. I think it's a revolting period of history. Imagine literally being a human being on Earth when these dinosaurs were going around.
Yeah, but they weren't,
and they just literally, with their long necks, picked you up for lunch and scrunched you like that. Take
But that's
bit
not-
off your
that's
legs
not what
first, and then
But that's not what happened.
Well, I think it did.
And also, the ones with the long necks tended to be herbivores because they had the long necks in order to get to the plants at the top of the leaves at the top of the
Eat
trees.
anything, those guys.
Yeah.
I reckon. They couldn't distinguish between a tree and a human being, which must have looked like a little bug to them.
I seem to remember that when I first went to the Natural History Museum, that there was a whale skeleton there anyway. There wasn't actually a dinosaur. I think the dinosaur's been put in relatively recently.
Yeah, I think I saw something. It's been there 14 years or something like that.
Something like that,
yeah. Anyway, it's going to go now. We bring back the whale. I think that's a good thing about bringing back the whale. I think we don't do enough to protect the whale on the Earth. Do you?
No, probably not.
You ever seen a whale? Have you been whale watching?
I've never actually been whale
Oh,
watching.
it's
Have you?
fantastic. No, I haven't, but I mean, I'm
Well,
going to.
how do you know it is then?
Well, because I know it is. I'm going to go to Alaska and watch the whales there.
Are you?
You get the best of all worlds. It's about -10. You get on a cruise ship that's got 16 bars on it because it's got to keep warm when you're on a
Well,
cruise
knowing
ship.
you, you'd probably miss the whale, wouldn't you?
Well, and but
you'd
the
be
best
in the
bit of
bar.
it, no, because you get the whales all day, every day in the Alaskan Bay or whatever it's called. You know what I mean?
I don't think
What was
so.
that sea called? The Bering Sea. It'd be the Bering Sea, wouldn't it? Yeah,
between Russia and
That's
the
right.
United States of America.
Which, incidentally, in caveman times, talking about cavemen, you could walk from America to Russia across
could.
the packed ice.
Well, it wasn't America and it wasn't Russia then. was
Well,
it?
I'm talking about the two land masses, which are now America and Asia.
Right.
You could walk across them. There was no difference.
Right.
That's how long ago it was.
Well, I say, when are you going to go on this cruise then to Alaska?
Well, I don't know. I'll fix it up. Don't worry, I'll sort it out.
Yeah.
I've got to sort out. For the first time in about 30 years, I've decided I may take a holiday this
Yeah.
year, okay?
I think you should.
Yeah, I think so.
Because, I mean,
Rest the brain a bit.
time, as you've said many times, is of the essence. Time is
I
running out.
totally agree.
Nobody's going to live forever.
But anyway, listen, we're talking nonsense and we're gabbling on when we should be talking about important things. Like,
Okay.
for instance, I have a mission to warn our listeners about the dangers of toothpaste.
Oh, yeah, you were going to tell us
Do you know
about
about
toothpaste.
this?
Yeah, no, I don't, yeah. What's the
Incredible.
problem with toothpaste?
I've seen this report from America which says that toothpaste could be responsible for the death of literally millions of fish in the sea.
Really?
Particularly things like oysters and mollusks. What's a mollusk?
A mollusk is
Yeah.
like a shell. It's a shellfish, I
So
suppose.
it's like an
you would
oyster,
say.
is it? Yeah, because you won't believe it, but what they do in I mean, there's all sorts of chemicals in toothpaste, but one thing they put in them are these tiny little balls of plastic. Okay,
Plastic.
But
Well,
they're
in the toothpaste?
In the toothpaste, because they're used as friction against stains on your teeth. You see what I mean? But they're so small. They're called microbeads, by the way.
Okay.
Microbeads, and they're so small you can't even see them under a microscope. But the effect they have is to be aggressive against your teeth, to get rid of stains and all that. But when you then go whoosh, 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 and you spit it all back
I'd rather
out.
you didn't, actually do
but
the
I mean,
spitting bit.
I'm not spitting. I'm just imitating it, and then it runs down into the waste pipe and all that, and it goes out like all the water that runs through a domestic or industrial situation. It's regenerated.
Yeah.
Okay, it gets out into the sea.
Well, isn't the fluoride bad as well?
Eh?
Isn't the fluoride bad as well?
Well, some toothpaste has fluoride and some doesn't. Now,
Well, it's fluoride
I'll
in
get
the
to
water,
fluoride
isn't it?
in a minute. Now, these microbeads have been found inside oysters, mussels, lobsters and fish in the North Sea and as far away as the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic. Their effect is similar to that of plastic carrier bags that find their way into the sea. They clog up the ecosystem. They will kill millions of fish.
Well, presumably it's not everybody from this country that's causing the problem, though, because, I mean, people are brushing their teeth all over the world.
Well, yeah, I know they are, but, I mean, I'm saying this is a report that I've happened upon, OK? Now, the other thing is, toothpaste is full of peroxides. It's full of hydrogen peroxide, OK, which bleaches teeth, and hydrogen peroxide is toxic. It's irritant to all the soft tissue in your body, damages the mucous membranes in the mouth, can cause harm to the surface cells of your gums. There's also...
so is there some kind of alternative that they're proposing that you use instead of toothpaste?
This is the great debate. What are we going to do without toothpaste?
Yeah.
Now, another thing they use, and they've taken this out of some toothpaste, is triclosan. OK? And triclosan is a chemical used to prevent gum disease. And it's originated in the US, but they found that it is having a lot of side effects, like sodium lauryl sulfate, which is also having a terrible side effect.
What are you talking about?
Well, I'm talking about these chemicals in toothpaste. You've got to find something else.
Yeah, but one, I don't think you're pronouncing it properly. Two, that's harking back to your old toothpaste scenario and your washing machine mouth.
Why can't we go back to what the Victorians did?
What did they do?
They cleaned their teeth with soot from their chimneys, didn't they?
Soot?
Yes.
I think I've heard this before.
Yeah,
doesn't sound like a very good idea, though.
Yeah, well, you see, you were about to mock me. You were about to mock me, and then back of your head, you thought, no, actually, what Mike's just said is in fact sense.
Well,
you clean your teeth with
soot doesn't sound like a very good idea. Plus, you haven't got a fireplace, so it wouldn't help you, would it?
Well, you could.
I could sell you some of my soot if you like.
I was about to say, you could buy bags of soot to clean your teeth. Why not? And apparently, it is very, very effective. Very effective in the sense that it kills off germs in your mouth.
Does it?
Yeah, it helps.
It tastes pretty horrible, though.
No, I don't think it does. Why would it taste horrible?
Well, because it's come from a chimney.
No, it hasn't, though, has it? It's come
where's
from...
it come from, then?
Whatever you were burning in your fireplace. You say you burn wood.
Yeah.
So your soot is wood-based powder, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's black and burnt and horrible.
No, that wouldn't taste unpleasant. I wouldn't... Well, I don't think toothpaste tastes particularly nice, do you? You know, I think it's rather...
well, why don't you do an experiment?
Irritating. Well,
I'll bring you some soot on Monday.
Okay.
And you can clean your teeth with it for a week.
All right.
And see how it goes.
All right, I'll go for that. What are you laughing at?
Because I think it will be a ridiculous exercise.
No, I'll go for that, honestly. Or find something else to clean your teeth. I mean, how many times a day do you clean your teeth?
Twice.
I do as well. But 4 or 6 times a day I rinse my mouth with mouthwash.
How pleasant for you?
Well, no, it's to get into the crevices of your mouth that a toothbrush can't attack.
Uh-huh.
Now, talking about toothbrushes, I found out something else which is absolutely fantastic.
Is it?
There's a chap who is he's a sort of inventor, and he's come up with a brilliant idea which we should have thought about 100 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
You know, with a toothbrush, we either put it in a little glass jar or we stick it into a tooth rack. Now,
You're talking about a non-electric toothbrush, aren't you?
Of course I am. Or we put it on the side of the sink, OK? In each case, it can pick up germs from the atmosphere, from the sink, from anything else. Now, what this chap has invented is a fantastic idea, and he said particularly good for children. Imagine a toothpaste standing up, OK?
Toothbrush.
A toothbrush, a toothbrush standing up, OK?
Well, I'll imagine the one I've got, which is electric,
that's right.
which stands up.
No, this is non-electric.
Invented?
No, this is non-electric. It's non-electric, OK? And then imagine a ball of plasticine, stick the toothbrush into the ball of plasticine.
Yeah. Is this what he's invented?
This is what he's invented. And then you've got what is...
It's not exactly brilliant, is it?
No, it is brilliant. Nobody else has thought of it. You've then got the Wibbly Wobbly Man toothbrush, haven't you?
What?
You know what the Wibbly Wobbly Man is? Of course you do.
What is
the
that?
Wibbly Wobbly Man is
Why
a
are you
plastic
shouting?
figure because you're acting stupid, because you can't appreciate what I'm telling you, right? Now...
Oh, look, Dave, our producer, just invented the same thing with a piece of blue tack.
Absolutely, there you go. Isn't that brilliant?
Is this guy from your school of inventions?
Yeah.
That's, you know...
Yeah, that is brilliant.
No,
Well
that's
done, Dave.
fallen off.
Yeah, OK. Well, hang on, I'll put it back on. Sorry, here we go. Well done, David. That's excellent. But what he's done is, it's bigger than this. It's bigger than just the blue tack stuff. And the Wibbly Wobbly Man, Mike, you've seen it. You punch it and it goes back and it comes...
Well, I wasn't aware that he was called the Wibbly Wobbly Man.
The Wibbly Wobbly Man, the bottom of the plastic figure is full of sand or water.
Right.
So
it's a beach toy.
Eh?
It's a beach toy you're talking about.
It's not a beach toy, it's a wibbly-wobbly man. And so when you punch the wibbly-wobbly man, he goes away, but then, like Muhammad Ali, he comes back at you and he can bash you in the face if you're not paying attention.
Have you got one of these wibbly-wobbly men at home, then?
No, I haven't, no. So,
there goes the toothbrush again.
Fallen off again.
I've seen the time, by the way.
Yeah, I know. So what I'm saying is you put a wibbly-wobbly man device on the bottom of your toothbrush and you just put it on the side next to the sink, and therefore it never... The bristles never come into contact with the tiles, and therefore you get no germs. You pick it up, you use it in your mouth, and you put it down again. I think it is genius.
Or you could just buy an electric toothbrush.
What did we always say? 99% of genius is perspiration. Perspiration and inspiration, and not genius.
Right. Yeah. Or graduation. Or creation, or any number of words that end with shun. He's Mike Parry. I'm Mike Graham. We've got a quiz coming up a little bit later on. We are the two Mikes. This is Talk Sport Extra Time. We are the two Mikes, and a little bit of Russian from Russia
Lovely
with Love.
music. That.
I know you like From Russia with Love.
That's thanks to our tech up there, young lady who, inspirationally, when I told her what we were going to talk about, found that in a split second.
Yeah, I know.
The sort of people we need in this organisation, Mike.
Can you remember what her name is?
Those are on the ball. Of course I can.
What is it?
I'm not going to tell our listeners.
You can't remember, can you?
Intimate details of our staff here. That's not right, is it?
No, it's not right.
Sarah, of course.
Sarah?
Yes.
No, it's not.
I know it's not. But I was telling the audience that to put them off the track.
Yeah, I think you've been given some false information.
If I'd given them the right name, then because she's a very attractive lady, she'd start getting, inappropriate
messages.
Yes, so we're not
we
doing
certainly
that.
Wouldn't want
not doing that. Now then, the reason we're doing this is because of course, I have my friends in naval intelligence down in Portsmouth.
Absolutely, yeah. What have they been telling you lately?
Well, I can't reveal that actually on radio, but what I've become aware of, and I'm not the only one, other people know about this, is that Russian bombers are now testing our air defences every day.
Are they?
In the old Cold War days, I mean, one of the main things that the RAF had to do, and actually we quite liked it because it gave our pilots the opportunity to test themselves in reconnaissance, and it gave the Russians the ability to try and test our defences. Yeah. It gave both air forces something to do.
It was a bit of a game, really, wasn't
it? Yeah, it was a game. But we thought that had all gone with the end of the Cold War.
Same with the submarines, right?
It was the same with the submarines, that's right, yeah. But Mr. Putin, apparently, now he's head of the country, has given the nod to starting this sort of, cat and mouse game again.
Oh, yeah.
And last week...
I'm surprised they've got the money to fuel them after what's happened to the ruble.
That's a good point. But last week, the RAF went up a couple of what do we fly these days? Typhoons, that's right. And warned away one of those huge Russian planes that still have propellers rather than jets because they're so big they can't find jet engines.
It's the Russian version of the Hercules?
It's the Russian version of something. What are they called?
Yeah, the big transport plane.
Yeah,
right?
well, they're actually military planes that can carry nuclear missiles.
Oh, yeah.
One of them was spotted on radar, that is, just a few miles south of Bournemouth.
Maybe they'd heard about your campaign to leap off the end of the pier.
I mean, this is my immediate thought, because the boys in Bournemouth are a bit upset with me, because I've said I'm not sure that Bournemouth will actually make it to promotion before the end of the season.
Well, you've done more than that. You've put your sort of money where your mouth is. I have. You've said if they do get promoted, you're going to jump off Bournemouth Pier dressed as a duck.
I will. Yeah. I would definitely do that.
A lot of people are looking forward to that.
Yeah, and I stand by that. But what I'm saying is, if any of those boys in Bournemouth feel that they really want to warn me off and all this. And some of them might work in the defence industry. Some of them might even work in the diplomatic industry.
Are there any naval installations down there in that part of the world?
Well, not really in Bournemouth, but remember, it's not very far from Portsmouth.
No.
And it's in between sort of Portsmouth and Plymouth, which are our two main naval bases, Dartmouth and Portsmouth, of course, the home of the British Navy. Now, you can bet your life there are some intelligence people down there. How do we know? How do we know that one or two of them haven't had some influence over the fact that Russian planes are now buzzing Bournemouth? Yeah. It seems unlikely.
Did people actually see it then? Was it low enough for people to see, or was it just picked up on the radar systems?
I don't think it was. I think it was the Typhoons were dispatched from RAF Lossiemouth, which is in Scotland.
In Scotland, yeah.
And from
they can get down there pretty fast, though, can't they?
Oh yeah, Coningsby, Lincolnshire. Well, if they're flying at the speed of sound, which is about the average.
Well, Mach 1 is what, 1,000 miles an hour or something?
750.
Right? Is it?
Yeah, Mach 1 is 750 miles an hour. So if the plane takes off from Lossiemouth and flies to Bournemouth, which is about 500 miles, be there in 40 minutes.
Right.
But I mean, it goes out to intercept these planes that come in from the east, obviously.
So what's your point? Are you saying that we should be worried about this?
Well, what I'm saying is that we thought the Cold War had gone away, and as a result of which, we have depleted our military resources to a worryingly low level.
That's true.
Now, let me tell you this, Mike. When I first bought the old penthouse in Gosport...
Yeah. Which is not really a penthouse, technically.
What does that mean?
Well, it's not a penthouse because it's not at the top of the building, is it?
It's very close to the top.
It's close to the top,
very close
but
to
it's
the
not
top.
at the top, which is what a penthouse should be.
No, but the only ones above it recede towards a midpoint at the top of the building.
So what are the ones above it called, then, if yours is the penthouse?
Plazas.
Plazas?
Yeah, plazas. So,
are you sure about this?
I'm certain about it. So what I'm saying is, when I first was there, and that was in 2005, every Christmas... the ships were allowed to come home. There was no Cold War, and, families get together at Christmas long. Anyway. And sometimes there might be, 20 boats in Portsmouth Harbour. This year there was one. And
that's the only one that could come home.
That one, right, did not include an aircraft carrier, where we used to have 3, right?
Well,
5 years ago.
They're still building the aircraft
5
carrier,
years ago, we had 3 aircraft carriers, 2 of which were always in port, or very often in port. One was always permanently in port, and it was a magnificent sight to see Ark Royal or... I forgot the name of the other one now. Illustrious, thank you. HMS Illustrious parked there,
With the Harrier jump jets on board, presumably.
Well, not for the last few years, because they haven't had any planes on them. But the point I'm making is this.
What is the point?
We've got to be aware of the Russian bear, because, when the Russian bear rumbles... everybody rumbles, the world rumbles.
Well, the thing about the Russian situation now is that because of what's going on in Ukraine, Barack Obama's threatening Russia with more sanctions. So the sort of the it's getting a bit more tense, isn't it? The whole diplomatic situation.
It is.
But also the difference between now and when the first Cold War was really going on in the 50s and 60s. Is that there's all sorts of Russian money now in the West, including
massive amounts.
In London. I mean, some of the biggest investments in London are owned by the Russians.
I totally agree. I mean, it's so different. Russia was a poverty-stricken country in the Cold War because of the amount of money it had to spend on defences against an attack that was never going to come. I mean, and the fact that they would not create wealth.
Right.
It was easy to create wealth in Russia because Russia have always had more gas, more power.
And now they're selling all the gas to Europe as well.
Of course they are, and all that kind of stuff. But, I mean, look, it's the world's a dangerous place. And when it gets to the people of Bournemouth, lying on their beach... Well, they wouldn't be lying on the beach, actually, in January. But you know what I mean? Walking along the beach and all that. And the thought of the Russian Bear heavy-duty bombers that can carry nuclear... missiles
they're not going to be doing anything with
flying
those,
over top. No, but nevertheless, don't you see the image that I'm trying to portray here? It's very dangerous.
Well, I do, but I don't share your concern about it, to be honest, because I think it may be, if it's anything, it's just going back to those kind of games that they played in the past.
Yeah, but we shouldn't be playing them. And what I'm saying is, I hope this government and the next government that's going to come in 100 days' time realises that we are an island. We should have a navy to defend ourselves. We should have an air force to defend ourselves. And at the moment, it doesn't look like we've got one.
No. It doesn't. But
See,
I mean, I don't
that's my point. That's the point I'm making.
Well,
standing up for the common man in the street again.
Well, don't start
in the defence
shouting.
of the realm.
Don't start shouting, because everybody knows that you've kind of given up your credentials this week of being the friend of the common man because of your snobbish attitudes about a whole variety of things.
That's a propaganda you're putting about.
I think the problem is now that there is a bit of a crisis going on with Russia. They are sort of on their financially they're on their uppers, as it were, which is never going to stay the same forever. But I don't think. I mean, if there was to be any kind of conflict, it wouldn't just be between Russia and Europe. It would be between Russia and everybody else. So I don't think we need to necessarily spend a load more money on ships.
Well, why would it be between Russia and everybody else? Who's everybody else?
Well, everybody else, including the United States.
No, I don't agree with you. The United States have decided now they don't want to be the world's policeman anymore.
They don't know what to do.
They don't want to be the world's policeman anymore.
It's a bit worrying, actually, when you think about who might be the next president, isn't it?
I couldn't even name you apart from Hillary Clinton, I couldn't name you any of the candidates.
It's more than likely to be Hillary Clinton or Jeb Bush. Who was the guy
Jeb
that
Bush,
was
I could name him, No, he is, But the thing is, within 5 years anyway, China might be a bigger military power than America. So America are right to say, what's the point of being the world policeman anymore? We're not even going to be the strongest military power.
Maybe the world will just be run by Apple by then.
Well, this is absolutely the point, Mike. I mean, that's a very, very good point you've made there. Do you know that Apple, here, I can read you the figures. Apple has reported the biggest profits ever made by a global corporate giant feeding a £120 billion cash mountain.
Incredible, isn't it?
Record profits driven by phenomenal sale of the latest iPhone 6 or Apple amassed the cash pile, which is larger than the total market value of Disney, Pepsi or Amazon.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
And I have to say I've contributed to it because I've got one of those phones.
And
I've got one of their iPads. And one of the reasons they've been so successful, actually, is because they're getting them all manufactured now in China for very small amounts of money.
That's right, It is astonishing. Apple yesterday revealed that its profits for just the past 3 months, that's just 3 months, right, of 2014, Yes, that's right. The last 3 months, I'm sorry, were $18 billion.
Yeah.
That's £11.9 billion. The figure puts it ahead of the record set by multinational oil giant ExxonMobil in 2012, when oil was at a record.
It's time that you got onto this bandwagon and got rid of that information device of yours and got us to something a bit more modern.
Yeah, maybe you're right, yeah. Carried along on the tide of surging global oil prices at the time, but this is the point you've just made. Apple sold a record 74.5 million iPhones in 3 months before Christmas. Can you imagine that?
I can imagine it.
Who bought these 74.5 million
every time
iPhones?
they bring out a new phone, people queue up around the block to be the first people to own them. Do you remember that guy who bought it first? I think he was in Australia.
Yeah.
And he came very proudly out of the shop and dropped it on the ground.
Yeah.
Hilariously.
Yeah.
But, apparently
I saw
it was okay.
it, yeah.
And then even though people were saying, oh, don't buy the iPhone 6 because it bends. When you sit down, it will bend and it will break and you won't be able to use it. That didn't put people off. The thing is, we were talking to a guy this week about it, a technology specialist.
Right.
Who said the thing about Apple is what they've also done is they've made their products more expensive. And that's why people are actually buying them in greater numbers. So they've actually gone against any economic model that you'd like to think about.
What, a kind of snob factor?
A kind of snob factor, which is why you should have one.
I only buy an expensive phone.
Because, I mean, you being a snob should have an iPhone.
No, I'm not a snob. Joe, I've got a list of facts and figures here about Apple. It's quite incredible. 12 billion profit Apple made in the past 3 months. 18 seconds is the time it takes Apple to earn the average annual wage of a full-time UK worker.
Yeah.
18 seconds. Unbelievable. Yeah. 600 million phones sold since the smartphone's launch in 2007. Who has bought these 600 million phones?
600 million people.
Well, maybe you're right. But what I'm saying is, where are these 600 million people?
Well, a lot of them are in China.
A lot of them in China.
A lot of them in America.
A lot might be in India, I suppose.
They might be. A lot of them are in this country. I can't believe you haven't caught on with this.
75 million iPhones sold in the last quarter alone. Who are these 75 million people? Where are they? How can you manufacture phones at that rate?
Well, because you do it in China, that's the point.
It's astonishing. £420 billion is the total value of Apple's shares. That is more than the gross domestic product of all but the world's richest 20 countries. It ranks just below Switzerland and is £17 billion bigger than Argentina's.
Yeah.
So Apple is worth more than Argentina.
Yeah, it is.
That is incredible.
That's what I'm saying. They might end up running. Something like that would end up running the world.
Good. Well, it says here, if asked by the US government to help out, Apple could afford to build 40 Nimitz-class nuclear-powered aircraft carriers for use for the US Navy.
Imagine that, the iCraft carrier.
Yeah, the iCraft
Why not?
carrier.
They can branch out into all sorts of defence products and all that. Yeah, that's fascinating stuff. Yeah. Now, coming up in the next hour, we're going to be talking to Sandra Lee down in Australia. We're going to find out what's going on with Prince Philip and why they've suddenly decided to give him some kind of honour.
Good idea.
And it is time for the Porky quiz as well, of course, in which your journalistic
I'm going to wipe the floor with you on this one,
will be put
do you know why?
Under the microscope.
Do you know why?
Why?
Because you're giving me a quiz on journalism, but you're a journalist as well.
Yes.
I'm going to illustrate to our audience, to our listeners, just how much more I know about the profession that you and I have been in for the last 30 years than you do.
Well, I think it's a great opportunity.
You're an imposter.
It's a great opportunity.
A fraud.
Really?
Yeah.
What's that got to do with journalism?
A half-bake in terms of journalism, you are.
Do you think?
And I'm the full-bake, if you see what I mean.
You are the full-bake. I think in some ways you're a bit overdone, actually.
We're going to prove that.
We are the two Mikes. He's Mike Parry. I'm Mike Graham. Got a few tweets to read out to you, Mr. Parry.
Yeah.
Dan says, wibbly wobbly man. Porky means the weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. Is that what you meant? The Weebles, rather than the Wibbly Wobbly Man.
No, it's called the Wibbly Wobbly Man.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Do you remember the group Duran Duran?
Yes, I do.
And they made a sort of comeback a few years ago. I mean, you know, they had their heyday in the 80s, I think, didn't they? And then they sort of went out of fashion for about 15 years.
Yeah.
And then they made a sort of...
funny enough, I was talking to somebody just the other day and they were doing a concert over in LA for about 6,000 people, doing about 3 nights somewhere over there.
Okay. Well, they made a short-lived comeback, you know.
Yeah. Well, they're still on the comeback.
Is it? Oh, okay. John Taylor, was he a member?
John Taylor was a member of it, yeah.
Yeah, and
Simon
Le Bon, obviously, the lead singer, who was married to that lovely model.
Yasmin
Le Bon, that's right, yeah. And anyway, I saw them in a TV interview. They came back with a comeback single, which got quite high up the charts.
Right.
I remember Simon Le Bon saying, the thing is, over the last 7 or 8 years, he said, people have written us off. And he said, but, hello, we're back. Well, like the Wibbly Wobbly Man. Bang, it's gone. Oh, no, look, it's back and smacked us in the face.
He said the Wibbly Wobbly Man.
He said the Wibbly Wobbly Man. That's why I call it the Wibbly Wobbly Man. Is that where you got it from? Yeah, that's where I got it from,
Well, I think he means Weebles as well. Maybe you got it wrong.
No, Wibbly Wobbly.
Here's one from Mr. 13. He said, Mr. Parry is bang on the money with the soot. It's actually called activated charcoal,
right,
which is slightly abrasive.
Well, there you go. There you go. How about that, you see?
Well, I'm going to bring you a bag of it.
Yeah, but you see, you constantly mock things I do and say, and then, thank God, we've got an army of listeners who are brighter than us combined, who actually know...
Well, that's not saying a lot in some cases.
Well, not in your case, certainly. And who know the facts and send us the corroborative evidence of the things I say.
And Neil says this, where does Porky get these pearls of wisdom from? Has he been watching the Flintstones? I think that's with regard to your knowledge of prehistoric creatures.
No, I have a deep insight into how the world was formed and where it got to where it is now, to be honest. Now, talking about where we got to now,
yes.
Would you ever wear a cardigan?
No.
Right,
I don't think I would ever wear a cardigan. I think I could say that pretty much with a great degree of certainty.
That men's magazine, GQ?
Yes.
There's done like a cardigan special, I noticed.
Special?
When I was perusing the,
really?
The magazine racks in WH Smith going home yesterday.
GQ's not your kind of magazine, is it?
Well, not really. I don't really read it.
But younger, fashionable
But
types.
you see what's on the front of it. And the two people that they actually cite as being, two of the coolest men in the world who've now taken to wearing cardigans, David Beckham and Daniel Craig, who was James Bond.
Well, I suppose they are two of the coolest men on the planet.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm like you. If I see a man in a cardigan, I immediately say lemon.
Lemon?
Yeah.
What for?
Well, because you're a lemon if you wear a cardigan. What do you say?
What
do you say about
it? Lemon.
No, what do you say about a man who wears a cardigan?
Well, I don't think they're... obviously, if Daniel Craig and David Beckham are wearing them, then they've obviously become fashionable items.
No,
however,
I think they look like lemons.
Well, I wouldn't abuse anybody in the street.
I'm not abusing anybody. I'm just offering an opinion.
I wouldn't call them anything.
I think you're a lemon if you wear a cardigan. A man wearing a cardigan, to me, is wearing a piece of...
What about women wearing cardigans?
Women can wear as many cardigans as they like.
Andrew's wearing a cardigan today.
Andrew's wearing a cardigan. It looks
Sarah,
very nice indeed.
Known.
Sarah,
yeah.
sorry. That was the best song Fleetwood Mac ever wrote. Sarah. Down there in the sea of love, where everybody would love to drown. Anyway, that's I digress. The point is...
You think that's better than Go Your Own Way?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
I don't.
I think just because David Beckham and Daniel Craig wear cardigans, which I regard as an item of women's clothing, not that I'm against cross-dressing.
Well, not really.
If people want to cross-dress, that doesn't bother me.
Right.
But I'm not suggesting that
I don't think men wearing cardigans...
By the way, I'm not suggesting David Beckham...
I don't think men wearing cardigans qualifies as cross-dressing.
I was about to say, I'm not accusing David Beckham or Daniel Craig of being cross-dressers, because they're not cross-dressers, but I am saying that I regard a cardigan as an item more suited to women's apparel than men's.
Apparel is what you mean, I think. Is it not also the case that you would kind of... for me, it's the sort of thing that an old professor would wear, or a prof, as you would call him.
Yeah, prof,
or somebody who would be, involved in some kind of academica.
Yes, I agree. Wouldn't that be a great life, by the way? Do you ever watch Lewis, the TV series?
I do occasionally, yeah.
And don't you
the problem with watching Lewis for me now is because I don't watch it sort of when it's on.
Right.
I tend to watch it on the ITV player. Yeah. And so I'm never quite sure which series it is. I'm never quite sure who's running it. It goes back. I don't watch it in any sequence.
It's pretty easy to follow. If the Geordie guy, what's his name, Blakely?
No,
what's his name? What's the Geordie guy's name in it?
What do you mean, Lewis himself?
Yeah, Lewis, yeah. What's his name?
I don't know.
Kevin Whatley.
Kevin
Wakely. If he's the boss and in charge, then it's the first two series.
Yeah.
If, however, it's a live new series...
The younger guy.
Yeah, Lawrence Fox from the famous Fox family, married to Billy Piper.
Okay.
Who used to be married to Chris Evans.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
You're a font of knowledge on this celebrity stuff.
Font of knowledge, mate. And if he's in charge, then that's the latest series.
He wears cardigans, actually, doesn't he?
I think he does. But anyway, look, getting back to the cardigan thing, right, all I would say is...
But you don't really wear jumpers either, do you?
No, I don't. I've got a load of jumpers, which a family have bought me over the years, and I've never worn one. I don't wear one, no.
Right.
Because they get out of shape.
Why don't you have any jumpers at all?
Because I like buying nice, bold shirts which have bold patterns on them.
Well, you're wearing a striped shirt at the moment. I wouldn't call it bold.
Well, I think it's quite nice, though.
It's all right, yeah. I wouldn't call it bold.
I could easily translate this into wallpaper and have it on the walls of my home, my penthouse, because it's a very nice shirt. But what I was going to say is, I don't wear a jumper because I don't want to hide the shirt away. Do you know what really gets me? When I see people in very highly paid jobs, like Brendan Rodgers, the manager of Liverpool, and he comes out after the game, he's got a very expensive charcoal suit on, he's got a Liverpool club tie, tied so tight it's almost throttling him, with an expensive white shirt, and then a jumper with a little V, which hides everything except the knot of the tie. I just don't understand that. Well, that to me is a fashion mistake. You're a fashion victim.
I'm sure he'd be devastated that you don't like his fashion sense.
Okay, getting back to the cardigans.
Well, what you wear half the time. Are you wearing a tie tomorrow, by the way, to Crystal Palace?
No, I'm not, no. Actually, that's a good point, because we're going to Sabroni's restaurant before the game. I think I will wear a tie.
Will you?
I think I will. Are you going to wear a tie?
Well, I will if you tell me.
Let's wear a tie. Well, I like dressing up sometimes.
We should wear one each.
Share one. Now, what I was going to say is, on the cardigan front, right, I do honestly...
There's a few buttons normally.
Eh?
On the cardigan front.
On the cardigan front, thank you. Yeah, you see, you haven't lost your touch. We worked in a profession years ago when what we call copy was processed by hand.
Yeah.
Copy is a piece of paper
Processed
with words.
by hand.
Yeah.
What are you talking about before William Caxton invented the printing press?
Well, not really, but it was in those sort of days because these days we're on a computer.
I had no idea you were that much of a veteran.
No, but when you used to put a piece of paper in your typewriter, type stuff out,
yeah.
that was then passed to the news desk, and then passed it to the sub-editors table. And the sub-editors were people who were failed reporters. They weren't good enough to go out on the road and find information, so they sat around in the office and processed information other people found.
And corrected your mistakes.
No, not correct my mistakes. So
sometimes they did.
When the Americans were trying to blow me up in Libya, you know, when Colonel Gaddafi was trying to hang me, when I was dodging bullets...
I don't think it was all about you, the Libyan crisis.
When I was dodging bullets down the Lower Falls Road in Belfast, you know, as rioters were trying to hurl petrol bombs at me to set me on fire...
It's always about you, isn't it?
Well, hang on. When I was, actually...
Forrest Gump of Fleet Street.
Excuse me. When I was out there chasing Bill Clinton around America to get the insight into who the next United States president would be, right? When I was doing all that, actually acquiring information at risk of life and limb...
Thank God you didn't have to send it all in on a laptop, because it would never have got there.
Yeah. What I'm saying is that information would then land on the sub-editor's desk in London, who would then sort of shape it and process it and chop it down to length and all that kind of stuff.
Correct it.
They always wore cardigans.
Some of them did.
They always wore cardigans. All the sub-editors wore cardigans. Now, that, to me, justifies my description of cardigan-wearing men as being lemons. They are lemons.
Well, I think you should be a bit more respectful to the sub-editors, because many of them would have saved your skin.
Oh, come off it. They were a joke in all newspaper offices. They used
Not true.
I tell you they were. They used to bring little plastic boxes in with marmalade sandwiches in them. And that's what they used to have for their lunch. Marmalade sandwiches. Can you imagine that?
You're ridiculing them on the basis they didn't go out and get rolling drunk like the horses.
No. They were dreadful people. They had nicotine-stained fingers. They used to smoke pipes, right, which they spent all day lighting and knocking out and knocking ash all over the place.
You're not kind of amalgamating everyone into one character.
No. And they used to mumble, profanities and all this kind of stuff. They thought they knew more about the English language than the man who wrote the Oxford English Dictionary, and they were a pain in the butt.
Yes.
Basically.
I think we've established that you didn't think they were very popular. They didn't like you very much either, but we'll have more of that coming up. This is TalkSport Extra Time. We are the two Mikes, and we're just about to speak to our very good friend and correspondent down in Sydney, Australia, Ms. Sandra Lee. But let me ask you about that piece of music first, Mr. Parry. Any ideas what that is?
Let me think. I wasn't listening.
You weren't listening?
No.
Well, what were you doing?
Well, don't worry.
Sitting here with headphones on?
No.
Why weren't you listening?
It's subliminally gone into my head. I would say that was somebody like the Manic Street Preachers.
Not correct, I'm afraid. It was Prince.
Oh, was that Prince, was it? Yeah. Do you know how tall Prince was?
Very small.
5'1".
Yeah.
And he used to wear high heels to make himself 5'4" or 5'5".
Yeah.
But he's still very small.
Yes.
Yeah. But he did well with the his attraction to the female form.
He has. I think that's got something to do with all the money he's got.
Yeah, I think could
May
be.
well be.
Could be.
Anyway, let's go to Sandra, because Prince Philip, which is why we played that song, of course, has now become some kind of subject of debate in Australia, because the Prime Minister wants to give him an honour. Sandra, very good morning to you.
G'day, chaps. How are you?
Yeah, morning, Sandra. Very, very well indeed, and all the better for hearing from you from the other side of the world.
Thank you very much.
Indeed.
Once again, I have to have this image in my head of him thinking of you upside down in the other side of the world, because, of course, that's what it's like. Now, I think even in this country, people were a bit surprised and aghast when on Australia Day, the Australian Prime Minister announced that he wanted to hand some kind of award to Prince Philip, who's a guy who, as much as even those who like him here think he's a bit past it, nobody could quite believe it.
Absolutely no one can believe it. Even the Prime Minister's most ardent admirers and supporters in the media and sort of within politics are all left shaking their heads thinking, what was he thinking when he made this decision? Nobody supports it at all. It came out of the blue, and everyone is absolutely aghast.
Is he just trying to wind people up with this?
Well, that could be part of it. Whatever he was trying to do with it, it's failed absolutely miserably for him. He has been bollocking all week. It's been relentless, even to the point where now people are saying that this could be the nail in his coffin. He hasn't been very popular, as we've spoken about before, and this looks like more people are just shaking their heads saying, what is he going to do next?
I didn't even know, even though I am a student of the British Constitution, Sandra, I had no idea.
That'll be the next quiz then.
Okay. That the Australian Prime Minister could heap honours on a member of the royal family in Britain. I thought it was always the other way around.
Well, that's what I thought too. I was actually a bit surprised as well.
Yeah.
And it was even more surprising simply because he then had to go to the Queen to get her A-OK for him to bestow her husband with an award. It's absolutely crazy.
Astonishing. Well, listen, this brings into focus the whole relationship between historically, Australia and ourselves, focused today, of course, on Andy Murray's victory to get him into the final of the Australian Open. Now, how has that been greeted by the Australian people? I mean, from my point of view, and you and I have worked together in New York with Mike here and lots of Aussies in New York during our time there, I think there's a real sort of love-hate relationship between Australia and Britain, but from my perspective, a very affectionate one.
It's an absolutely affectionate one, and Australia is all behind Andy Murray. We've got a lot of affection for him. He always puts on a really good show, and he did again last night when he won, when he beat Berdych to sort of get into the finals. It was a feisty game. It was a real love-hate match there on the court, let me tell you. There was
quite a few four-letter words uttered, weren't there?
There were quite a few. I think there's sort of, a lot of fornication was referred to.
Right,
it wasn't very pleasant, and especially by his girlfriend up in the stand. She sort of got into the swing of it as well.
She did. She got very animated indeed, because there's clearly a bit of history between these two camps, isn't there? But the demure, Andy Murray girlfriend has certainly shed her image, hasn't she, after yesterday?
She sure has. She can swear like a trooper.
But don't the Australians like that sort of thing? Don't they like, I'm not saying that Australian women are any less feminine or any less desirable than any women anywhere else in the world. But, an Australian woman is meant to state her point of view, isn't she? Quite unequivocally.
Well, I think a lot of Aussie women do, yes.
It's a bit of a stereotype, Mr. Parry, has to be said.
Oh, you're going to accuse me next of calling Sandra Sheila, are you?
Well, it was bordering on that, really, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't bordering on that at all.
Charming as ever.
No, what I'm trying to say is, I think Australian women have their own mind, and they know what they're doing.
Well,
and I think
what about other women?
I think Andy Murray's girlfriend has joined the ranks of that.
Right. Well, welcome to the 21st century.
Anyway, the other thing I'm going to talk to you about, Sandra, is within this relationship between Australia and England, we have become aware this week in England of one particular health authority in this country is taking on 175 health workers from Australia who are emigrating from Australia to England to try and plug some of the gaps we have in our health service here. That is a complete reversal of the way things have gone over the last, certainly the way things were going 50 years ago when boatloads of British people were going to Australia to fill labour gaps there.
That's right. And in fact, historically, they were known as, or the Brits that came over here were known as the £10 POMs because they paid £10 and they were on a boat and they came here and got jobs, and most of them stayed for life and made a great contribution to our country.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So have they got people already lined up for these jobs that they want to import into this country, or have they started advertising for people to come over, Sandra? And are they going to be taking up these jobs?
I think they will be taking up the jobs. There's been a lot of cuts here in healthcare. A lot of nurses have lost their jobs over here. So I think they would be eagerly taken up. And we've got some of the best nurses and health sort of medical experts in the world. So I reckon anyone who gets hold of any of our staff anywhere would be very lucky.
No, I think we would be. And the extra bonus, of course, and, don't take this the wrong way, is that politicians realise now that there is a danger in having health workers in England who don't speak English because they might misinterpret instructions from doctors and that sort of thing. So the advantage of having Australian health workers, who of course speak perfect English, is a bonus and getting around the problem that many people are getting very concerned about.
I reckon some of the patients might and the doctors might have a bit of a problem with some of the accents, though.
yeah, they might do. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
You're absolutely right.
Now, tell us, Sandra, do you mind if I say something?
No,
I'm just going to babble on coherently as usual.
No, I was going to talk about Crocodile Dundee, but you talk about something more interesting.
Yeah, let's not talk about Crocodile Dundee. He has this image of Australia. He thinks it's full of convicts and guys fighting crocodiles and kangaroos everywhere.
I think it's full of...
and women speaking their minds. Absolutely extraordinary,
I think it's full of glittering buildings around the harbour in Sydney.
Yeah, okay. Well, anyway, I was going to ask you, Sandra, what's bigger this weekend? Is it the one-day cricket stuff, or is it the Australian Open?
No, it's the Australian Open. The Australian Open is going to be very exciting, and I think that now that Andy Murray's in, it'll be interesting to see who he faces off against after the final tonight.
Yeah, it certainly will. And the other thing is, Sandra, is there a constant inquest going on, every time the Australian Open comes round, at this time every year, as to why Australia can no longer provide decent tennis players. Because when I was a kid...
Well, Nick Kyrgios.
Yeah. Hang on.
Never heard
because
of him,
yes, of course I've heard of him. When I was a youngster, and I'm a year or two older than you,
They were still
Sandra.
playing in long trousers.
No, they weren't playing long trousers. And why don't you just shut your mouth and let me get on with it? We had people like Roy Emerson, Fred Stolley. No, he was South African.
Yeah, he was South African.
Yeah, sorry, Roy.
Emerson Fittipaldi.
No,
Brazilian.
No. We had Roy Emerson, right?
Yeah.
And the other guy was John Newcombe.
Yeah.
He was
Tony Roach.
Ken Rosewall.
You don't know any of these people.
I know who they all
Laver.
are. Yeah, Rod Laver, that's right. And I mean, it was an era when, and of course, you had the women tennis stars. Maggie Smith, was it? Wasn't she?
Margaret Court,
that's right. Margaret
Court, yeah. Yvonne Goolagong.
Yvonne Goolagong, my PT master at school called her. He couldn't pronounce her name properly. Yeah. But no, you're right.
It's pretty simple.
Imagine that.
Yeah. Are you having a regular inquest every year now as to why you can't produce any great tennis players
anymore?
What
about Leighton Hewitt?
Well, that was 10 years ago when Leighton Hewitt was even number 3 in the world. I mean, that was a long time ago. So could you let Sandra now answer the question?
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
Leighton Hewitt has just announced that he'll be retiring after next year's Australian Open. He's going to give it one more crack. That will be his 20th.
Right.
And he's retiring. But you're pretty right. We haven't had a top player for a long time now, and people are shaking their heads. And especially even in the women's camp, everyone sort of puts their hope on Stother, and she gets sort of to the end, and then she bottles. So everyone is wondering, when are we going to have another great tennis star?
Yeah. Why did
we haven't got that much to boast about. We've got Andy Murray, and that's about it.
Well, and that's the first in 50 years, so no, we haven't got a lot to boast about. Why did Melbourne steal the sort of tennis venue glitter rather than Sydney, Sandra? What's the history of that?
Melbourne always had it. It was always the Australian Open historically has always been played in Melbourne, so they always had the better courts down there.
So they never actually stole it then?
Well, no, but I mean...
No, never stole it.
But also, of course, one of the world's most famous horse races is the Melbourne Cup.
Melbourne Cup, yeah.
Right, OK, so that's in Melbourne, obviously.
That's right.
Yeah, usually.
Usually it's called the Melbourne Cup. So Melbourne is really your sporting city, isn't it?
No.
Pretty much. Melbourne does sort of pride itself on being the sporting hub of Australia. Sydney every now and then tries to nick something from it, but Melbourne always sort of holds on to it fiercely. They're renowned in Melbourne for being mad sports nuts, and everyone says it's because there's not much else going on, which is a bit of a mean thing to say.
It is, yeah. Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter. There's plenty of drinking to be done in Sydney.
Well, so, that's Porky's version of travel around the world. Sandra, thank you very much indeed. We've got to leave it there because we're running out of time, sadly. We've got to talk about Sheffield Wednesday coming up in a short while because you've got a development at Sheffield Wednesday you want to talk about.
I might have to give up tuna.
Apparently so.
I might have to give up tuna because of Sheffield Wednesday.
Yeah, that's more tins out of the old war chest.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Coming up, though, we're going to be doing the Porky quiz, and of course, it's on his favourite subject, journalism, coming up next on the Two Mics.
Bad news. Everywhere I go.
Bad news, good news.
It sounds like Johnny Cash.
It does, doesn't it? Yes, I'm sure that's exactly who it is. Now, it is time for the Porky quiz,
with the ring
of course.
Fire.
And as you know, Mr. Parry, as we always say every week, these quiz questions have been compiled by independent quiz masters.
Yeah, like you.
Well, I have not had a hand in it. It's been provided for me. And there are 10 questions with yes or no correct answers, basically. And if you hear this sound, it means you've got it right.
Bad.
Surely that's got it wrong, isn't
that's
it?
If you got it wrong,
yeah. So can you get your facts right
Bad
before
news.
we start? Journalism is all about facts. Facts are sacred.
They are.
And you've got your facts wrong already.
Yeah, I have. Well, unfortunately, your friend Sarah behind the glass there always gets a bit nervous when it's quiz time because, she has to keep her fingers on the buzzers. Right, now, if you get
it's the power of my intelligence.
If you get one
sort
right...
of, flows over her.
If you get one right, you'll hear this.
Extra, read all about it.
I like that. That's good.
And, of course, you know what's going to sound like if you get one wrong.
Yeah.
Bad.
There you go. Right. So,
let's
are
go.
You ready?
Come on, I'm ready.
Are you
Never
ready?
been more ready in my life.
OK, question number 1. Who directed All the President's Men?
That's not a word. That's not a question about journalism.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not. It's a question about cinematography.
No, it's a question about a movie about journalism.
No, it's not.
Well, what's the answer?
All the President's Men was acted out by 2 actors.
Yeah.
That was nothing to do with journalism.
All the President's Men was also a book, don't forget.
It was a book by Woodward and Bernstein, right?
Bernstein.
Fine.
Bernstein.
Yeah, no problem at all. But Bernstein and Woodward did not play the lead roles in the film. They were played by... who were they played by? Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah.
And and the Sundance Kid.
The Sundance Kid was in it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't have a gun, though.
No, he didn't have a gun, no. But I'm
just asking who directed it.
Well,
It's the biggest newspaper film that anybody knows about.
I think I should refuse to answer that question
Well,
on the
you'll get
grounds
none
it's
out of one,
an
then.
illegitimate question.
Well, you'll get none out of
It's
one.
illegitimate.
None out of one.
I'll take a guess, though, because this is not a quiz on cinematography.
Take a guess.
Okay, I reckon it was... You want to know who? The director?
The director.
And it was made in the 70s. I reckon it was somebody like Scorsese.
Martin Scorsese.
Yeah.
Incorrect. It was somebody called Alan Pakula.
Well, you've never heard of him.
Well, I have, because
No,
I
you haven't.
directed All the President's Men.
Yeah, but before you put these ridiculous questions together, you'd never heard of him.
I didn't put these
That's the most
questions together.
shocking question. I mean, our listeners are on the ball. And I will, when this is over now, when this is finished, I will get all the messages from our listeners saying another cheating quiz with questions which are unanswerable.
Well, why don't you
ask
try...
me some questions about the profession of journalism?
All right, well, here's
you
one then.
oaf.
Question number 2. Which country has imprisoned several Al Jazeera journalists for over a year?
That is...
This is a question about journalism.
It is. The Al Jazeera guys who are in jail, that is Egypt.
Correct.
Thank you.
Question number 3. Which Observer editor gave up his source with the Westlands helicopter scandal?
Gave up his source.
Yeah.
Right? Observer editor.
Yeah.
Must have been Donald Trelford.
Correct.
Thank you. Hooray.
Extra, read all about it.
Hooray.
That's 2 out of 3.
Thank you.
Not bad at all. Question number 4. Who's the editor of the Times?
Who is the editor of the Times?
Yeah.
At the moment?
Yeah.
Just changed a year ago. It's James. James. Who used
You're
to be...
doing that thing where you're looking at me.
No.
Looking for some kind of answer.
No, he
Looking
used
for some
to.
kind of clue.
He was the editor of the Sunday Times, and he's moved to the Times.
If you say so.
And now, when I was in Fleet Street, I knew the editor of every newspaper because I worked with most of them.
Yeah.
I didn't work with this chap.
Uh-huh.
He was the Times. I never worked for the Times.
No.
Worked for the tabloid newspapers. You know what I mean? Now, this guy's name is James... it's not Purnell. It's not Purnell. He's a politician. James Hardy rings a bell in the back of my head. James Hardy.
Incorrect.
Bad.
James Hardy was the editor of the Times, but he was the one that changed it. John Witherow is the name.
Who used to be the editor of the Sunday Times.
He did.
So it's not James Hardy anymore.
Not James Hardy.
It's John Witherow.
It is. Well, you knew the editor had changed. You just didn't know his name.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I didn't know Witherow had been there that long.
2 out of 4. Question number 5.
Yeah.
When was the News of the World first published?
The News of the World was first published, I think...
I'll give you a bit of leeway on the year.
Yeah, I think 160 years before it closed, and it closed in 20...
Why are you making seal noises?
Hang on, it closed in 2012. Oh, hang on. Wait a minute, 2012, 1912. I reckon it was about 1863.
Incorrect.
Right.
Bad.
It was 1843.
Yeah, it's a stupid question.
Why is it a
That
stupid
is a very
question?
stupid question.
Why?
Well, I mean, if I said to you, in what year was the Scottish Reformation sanctioned, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know. How was I expected to know the answer to that?
Well,
What a
you
stupid
said
question.
You said you knew it was 160
I don't carry
years before
around
it
with
came
me an
out.
encyclopedia of the history of newspapers in my pocket, and that
Well,
wasn't a
it's a
story
question
about
about
journalism.
journalism.
It wasn't a story about journalism. That's a story about the history of one particular industry called the newspaper industry. That's not journalism.
Isn't it?
No.
Are you sure?
Newspapers get carried around on the backs of lorries. And all that I don't know anything about lorries. I don't know anything about Norwegian Woods, where the paper is made to print newspapers.
Don't you?
We're supposed to be talking about journalism, not
We
the
are.
antecedents to the newspaper industry.
I don't know why you're getting so worked up about.
Well, I do get worked up when you cheat me like this
You
and
got
make me
2
look
out of
like
5.
a fool. I'm not a fool.
2 out of 5.
Everybody knows I'm not a fool.
Well, here's some questions about journalism. Number 6. Which newspaper's motto is all the news that's fit to print?
All the news that's fit to print is the motto of... All the news is... Now, it's either the Daily Express or the Daily Telegraph. Now, I worked for the Express, and we just used the Crusader banner. And it was the Empire. It was Lord Beaverbrook. All the news that's fit to print is the motto of... Might be the Sun. Might be the son. Who might have adopted it as a sort of, balancing act.
Are you going to give me an answer? Or are you just going to keep looking for a clue?
All the news that's fit to print is the motto of the Daily Mirror.
Incorrect.
What was it?
It's the New York Times.
The New York Times?
Yeah. Everybody knows it's the New York Times. Even people who don't know anything about journalism.
You didn't tell me it was an overseas newspaper, you fool.
Well, it's a newspaper.
That wasn't about journalism.
You worked in New York for years.
I did, yes.
You used to look at the paper every morning. It's underneath the masthead. Question number 7.
Right.
What is the name of the new national newspaper for Scotland?
I didn't know they had one. I honestly didn't
you
know
are
they
a
had
journalist.
one. No, yeah, okay, I'm a journalist, but I don't study, people who go off on these wild schemes to publish new newspapers in
Don't you?
Scotland.
Okay.
Well, hang on. Now, the newspapers that are in Scotland are the Scotsman, right? That's one morning paper.
Yeah.
And the other one is called the Glasgow Times.
That's the Glasgow
Herald.
Times, yeah.
Glasgow Herald.
Yes.
Herald, right? You've got Glasgow Herald based in Glasgow, and then you've got the Scotsman based in Edinburgh, and you're saying there's a third one now.
There's another national newspaper, yeah.
And how long's it been going?
Not very long. Couple of months.
What? Some crazies who put money together to start another newspaper in this day and age.
Yeah.
Why didn't they just set fire to the money? Why didn't they?
Well, that may be a judgment call for you and somebody else. However, the question is, what's the name of it?
It's called Scotland Today.
It's called The National.
The National. That sounds like a horse race.
Yeah, well, that's the Grand National.
Yeah.
That's coming up in March, isn't it?
Well, that's another ridiculous question, because I do not study the culture of Scotland as close as you do.
Well, it's part
your
of
parents
journalism.
are Scottish, you're partly Scottish, so that's another loaded question.
Question, you've now got 2 out of 7. Question number 8.
Yeah.
How many journalists were killed in Vietnam? I'll give you the usual 10% leeway.
Yeah, journalists killed in Vietnam.
I'm told 5%.
Do you remember Ross Mark, who we worked with in New York, who was
Yeah.
our Washington correspondent Express? He did Vietnam.
No, I know.
And, do you know, he was teetotal there for 5 years because he had a wife who had alcoholism. So, in sympathy with her...
She had alcoholism.
Yeah, she had alcoholism. Yeah, she suffered it back in America. So, and after the Tet Offensive...
Can you just answer the question?
After the Tet Offensive, an American commander offered him a tin of Foster's, because Ross was an Australian, and the American commander felt so pleased that he found this can of Foster's in the middle of the Vietnam battle. Ross said, I couldn't refuse, so he drank it, and then he started drinking again.
Oh, well.
Yeah, he didn't become an alcoholic, though.
No, that's good.
I would say...
What's the answer?
I would say the number is nearer 0 than 100, OK? I don't think a lot of journalists were killed in Vietnam. Do you know not a single journalist was ever killed in Northern Ireland, you know? I made sure
You're going to
of
answer the question?
I would say... is he talking about worldwide or American journalists?
I'm called all journalists.
23.
Incorrect.
Bad.
Total was 63.
63.
Quite a lot of journalists, isn't it?
Yeah,
now, we have to hurry you through the last 2. You've got 2 so far.
Okay.
Question number 9. What was the splash in yesterday's Daily Mail? For those who don't know what splash is, that's the page 1 story.
In yesterday's Daily Mail?
Yeah.
Let's see. I think it was...
Don't start looking around your pile of papers.
Well, these are tomorrow's
Well,
papers.
no,
so...
they're today's, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Don't go through today's papers.
No. Yesterday's Daily Mail, it was something to do with politics.
Hey?
Politics.
Something to do with politics?
Political lead,
Oh, very good.
Political lead, yeah.
Well, you're not going to get a point for that.
Well, hang on, it
What
was
the
though,
story?
wasn't it? It was the story yesterday.
He's got his head in his hands now.
Well,
you're looking at 2 out of 10 here.
The Daily Mail has 60 stories in it. There are 11 national newspapers. That's 660
I'm
stories.
asking you for the story
How do you
on
expect
the
me to
front
remember
page.
one story?
Well,
I mean, again, it's ridiculous. It's needle in a haystack
It's a
stuff.
big front page of the Daily Mail yesterday.
Right, in my view, it was probably about...
You don't know, do you?
Eh?
You don't know, do you?
I'm saying I'm going to work out what the big stories are at the moment. I would say it was definitely about the election. It was the election story.
No.
It's the election story.
Incorrect.
Rubbish.
The headline was "Don't call 999."
That's an election story.
No, it isn't.
It is, because
No.
it's about lobbying for the health
Rubbish.
service for the election.
No.
It's an election story.
No, it's not.
Have you read it? Have you
No.
read it? I've read it,
Yeah.
and it said this will be used as a weapon because Ed
surprised you couldn't
Miliband said
remember
he's
it.
going to weaponise the NHS.
I'm surprised you couldn't
No,
remember
I got
it.
that one right.
No,
You've
incorrect.
gerrymandered the answer
All
to
right.
that one.
So far, 2 out of 9. Final chance of getting one question right in the back half of the quiz. Question number 10. What is the name of the film starring Russell Crowe based on a BBC TV series set in the offices of a Fleet Street newspaper?
What?
BBC TV series was set in the offices of a Fleet Street newspaper. It was turned into a film starring Russell Crowe.
When?
What's the name of it?
When?
Within the last few years.
In a newspaper office in Fleet Street?
Yeah.
Which newspaper office was it?
I can't remember which one it was.
And I don't remember a film about journalism based on Fleet Street, because I'd have been on top of that.
Well, do you remember the BBC TV series, though?
BBC TV series about a newspaper office? No, I don't. The last one I remember... By the way, there's a newspaper office in Broadchurch, you know.
Yeah, I know.
It's a little weekly
Very small.
newspaper, and it really reminds me of where I started on the Chester Chronicle.
Yeah.
It's very... Oh, dear me. Well, I'm not a great fan of Russell Crowe's. If I see Russell Crowe film, I turn it off, because I don't like the fact that he goes around throwing mobile phones at hotel receptionists. So I in protest, I don't watch his films.
Okay.
So it's no surprise I don't know the answer
You
to this
don't know
one.
the answer?
No.
So that's more bad news then. State of Play is the name of the
State of
TV
Play,
show.
never heard of it. I don't wish to know about Russell Crowe.
Well,
Again, that wasn't
sorry.
a journalist question.
Well, it was.
That wasn't a journalist question at all.
I'm terribly sorry to tell you that you've actually scored less on journalism than you do normally. You normally get 3 out of 10. You've actually got 2 out of 10.
Well, I'm sorry. Our listeners will be the judge on whether or not any of those questions were to do... The ones about journalism...
Shocking.
You know, who was the editor of The Observer? Donald Shelford.
Yeah.
I got that easy enough. The other one about
Who was the
journalism...
editor of The Times?
Well, because he's changed recently. And John Witherow, you know, he's not a gigantic figure in Fleet Street like I was, and like, you know, like editors of my era were.
Right.
Yeah. So
I'm very disappointed. I thought you'd do better than that.
I find this all pathetic.
I find it staggering that you can get less than 3 out of 10.
I might pull out of the quiz.
No, you can't.
If you can't improve the delivery of the questions to make them more relevant to the subject.
To make them easier, you mean?
No, to make them more relevant to the subject. You know, you damned...
Well, you tell us what subject you want us to quiz you on next week.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter what subject I say.
How about the British Constitution?
You then go make up questions about some totally different subject because you're a damned fidgety gibbety or whatever it's called.
Fidgety gibbety?
Yeah,
why are you rubbing your eyes?
Fibbit? I don't know, I've got something in my eye. I was thinking too deeply and I think I pushed my finger in my eye by mistake, but no, it's okay now.
Dear, oh dear. We are the two Mikes. He's Mike Parry.
Flibbity-gibbety it is, isn't it?
I'm Mike Graham. Wibbly wobbly, maybe.
Isn't it flibbity-gibbet?
Yes.
Flibbity-gibbet.
I think so. Coming up, we're going to talk about Sheffield Wednesday. This is Talk Sport. This is Talk Sport Extra Time. We are the two Mikes. He's Mike Parry. I'm Mike Graham. There will be a podcast coming out a little bit later on, and we've got some news as well on the live show front. First, though, do you think this song, that Fisherman's Blues, might become the signature tune of Sheffield Wednesday now?
Well, there's a very good chance it will. By the way, it's a lovely song.
Isn't it?
I can never remember
The
which group
Waterboys.
made it. Is it Waterboys, is it? Yeah, OK. Well, Keith brought that in one day, didn't he? Keith, who, when he was doing the show, Keith's now so busy. Nigel does, isn't he?
Yeah, that's right.
Very
Nigel
good show
Bothaway.
as well. Listen to it every Sunday. It's excellent.
You're not much of a fisherman, though, are you, really?
Not really, no. I must admit I'm not. But the guys know their subject so well. They make the show very interesting. But anyway, the point why we're on this is that Sheffield Wednesday have now been taken over by a company from the Far East who are apparently the biggest, manufacturers or processors, whatever you want to call it, of tuna fish in the world. They deal with about 80% of all the tuna fish in the world. Okay?
So they catch it all and tin it all, is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't know how it works. I think maybe, I'm not sure if they catch it, but they certainly process it. They put it in tins and they flog it around the world. Now, the thing is, to what extent can you, as a fan of another club, support the commercial interests of a rival? You know, when Manchester United might have bought Sky, one of the reasons they didn't, I mean, there were lots of commercial reasons, obviously, lots of regulatory reasons, but it was certainly suggested that if Manchester United owned Sky, an awful lot of other fans might just turn Sky off, because why should they contribute to the profits that would ultimately go to Manchester United and help them? It's the reason why in Glasgow, Mike, as you know better than I do, any company sponsoring Celtic has to sponsor Rangers as well.
They do.
Because otherwise, half of the city won't buy the product of the company sponsoring.
Well, it's worse than that.
club.
I seem to remember when National Car Rental sponsored one. I think the National cars are normally in green.
Yes.
And when they sponsored both clubs, as you said, quite rightly, Celtic and Rangers, the Rangers logo had to be turned into blue because they couldn't have a green logo.
No, that's right.
Even more bizarrely.
And by the way, I found something out this week talking to a friend in Scotland. Lark Hall in Scotland, right, you know it?
All right.
And it's quite a nice area, isn't it?
It is.
Do you know, you won't believe this, Mike, even in Lark Hall, which is a nice urban area where there's no violence and like that.
Well, I wouldn't say it's that nice.
Well, anyway, it's not the Gorbals, you know what I mean? All that kind of stuff, you know. They still put metal grills over all the traffic lights because vandals consistently go and smash the one that goes green because it's a Rangers area. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Isn't that amazing?
I'm not sure if it's true, but I'll take you on your word.
It is true. It is true.
So what are you saying? You're not going to eat tuna fish now because
well,
Sheffield Wednesday is sponsored by a tuna fish factory.
What I'm saying is, when I'm walking up and down the aisles of the supermarket now,
Yeah.
wondering, what to buy.
Or wondering which young lady to approach and ask where the coffee is or something.
No. That was just a tale about years ago.
Okay.
And I
So you don't
shouldn't
do
have
that
that
anymore?
thrown back in my face all
Well,
the
no,
time.
I guess a lot of people were kind of quite impressed by that.
Okay, I can be impressive. So I'm thinking to myself, now, if I buy 6 tins of tuna
Yeah.
on a special offer, all wrapped together in a plastic sort of, glove, you know what I mean? Like a wrap, a plastic wrap.
Multi-pack,
A
they call
multi-pack,
it, yeah.
which would probably cost about £11 or £12.
Do you eat a lot of tuna fish normally?
I like tuna fish.
Yeah.
I prefer salmon.
Do you?
I prefer tinned salmon.
That's a lot more expensive,
But,
though.
well, I was going to say, it's another story I'll come on to in a minute. So I'm thinking...
Do you eat the red salmon or the pink salmon?
Well, I'll come on to that in a minute. So the £13 pack of tunas, throw in the back of the car, and, we'll use them when I
So
find
you
them.
leave them in the back of your car. See, a lot of people would love to know what's in the back of the car.
No. You've got
That's
to
where you
remember...
find all my presents.
Mate, you've got to remember...
My next present's going to be a multi-pack of tuna fish.
Well, all I'm saying is, in this weather, the boot of my Mercedes car is like having a second freezer.
Right.
So when my fridge freezer's full at home...
So have you got it full of plates of baked beans then?
No, but you understand exactly what I'm saying.
I do.
You're better off, like, if I went shopping now, right, I would separate my shopping from things which are perishable to those that are non-perishable.
Right.
And if the perishable stuff didn't need taking up to the flat because I was taking it somewhere else, I'd leave it in the car because the car's colder than my flat.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to put it in the fridge upstairs. I'd leave it in the...
That's a bit of a dangerous ploy, though.
No,
isn't
it's
it?
not,
Wonder
no.
if animals might get in.
What? Get
Might
into the
attract
boot
animals.
of a car?
They might do.
Rubbish.
Well, you were just telling me about how foxes are biting through people's brake
They won't
cables.
bite through the boot of a Mercedes car, will
might
they, you
do.
fool? Anyway, point of the story is, when I look at the tuna,
Yeah.
I'm thinking, if I buy this, is £9 of this now going to the owners of Sheffield
Yeah,
Wednesday?
maybe so.
Am I supporting the building of a new club, Sheffield Wednesday, which might become a huge club in this country with the backing of this very
Well, why
rich
don't you find out
company?
who the people are who also make tuna fish and the other 20% of the market
and
just
buy their
tuna
tuna. Yeah, but
fish.
it might not be on sale and you might not have the choice.
Well, you might not. But,
Might
I
have
mean,
a choice.
the world's full of opportunities,
Well,
isn't it?
now getting on to salmon,
Yeah.
right? I think tinned salmon is incredibly expensive.
It
It's
is.
about nearly £5 a tin.
It is.
Yeah, that's a little tin. A big tin is about £8.50 or
Well,
£9.
no, it's about £4 a tin, isn't it?
All right, £4 then for a little tin,
Yeah.
which makes a big tin about £8 or £9, which I've just said.
Well, you don't buy
Right.
a huge tin of it, do you?
Why not? I do.
Why did you buy a huge tin?
Yeah, because I like eating it.
Well,
And I
how
put-
many sandwiches do you get out of a big tin of salmon?
No, I don't put it in sandwiches.
What do you do with it?
Well, I put it on a plate
Yeah.
and I make mashed potato, and I have mashed potato and salmon flakes.
What, cold salmon?
Yeah, it's great.
You really have no idea how to eat, do you?
No, it's great.
That's awful.
Well, what would you do with it?
What, with salmon? You make it into a very nice sandwich, basically.
Well,
Or you could make it into a salmon salad if you wish.
put it in a sandwich, but I don't
Well, I
like...
certainly wouldn't eat it cold with mashed potatoes.
Why not?
Because that sounds disgusting.
No, it's not. It's great. And you put butter on the mashed potatoes, right?
You could make it into a fish cake with mashed potatoes.
and you put a bit of lemon on the salmon.
Yeah.
I like lemon, okay? Don't like vinegar, but like,
Do you
like
actually
lemon.
mash the potatoes or just buy smash?
I buy smash. No, I do. But smash is good to make. Smash is good
well,
to
it's
make.
not difficult, is it?
No, exactly. That's what I mean.
I mean, you have to be a real moron to get that wrong.
But you see, in our busy lives, Mike, that means that you could time me, right? I take the tin of salmon home. How long does it take to open the tin of salmon with my electric tin opener, right?
Yeah.
And then tip it out onto the plate.
I'll tell you what else there is about
and then
salmon.
boil a kettle
Yeah.
to make the mash and put it on. 3 minutes later, I've got an instant meal in front of me.
But it's not very good, though.
No, it is. It's good. Salmon's very good for you.
Well, it is, but it's not really a
but
meal,
the point
is it?
I was going to make before you make your point...
I once got salmon all over the kitchen because the tin opener that was currently available to me couldn't open the salmon because it's got an extra ridge around the top of the tin. And it's quite difficult sometimes to open. And I managed to crack it open, but it wouldn't actually open the tin.
Right.
And so I got into a bit of a rage. I started throwing it into the sink
What for?
because I was annoyed.
What, you wanted to smash the top off or
I
something?
thought that was going to be the way to
Right,
do it, and I
right.
just kept deliberately
Yeah,
throwing
yeah,
it, and,
yeah.
there was salmon everywhere. It was on the blind.
sounds disgusting.
It was all over the roof.
Because, by the way...
It took ages to get rid of it.
Well, yeah,
It was
and
a
also,
nightmare.
and also...
And I still couldn't open the tin.
Also, the odour and the distinction of salmon
Yeah.
can go everywhere,
Yeah.
and it takes you years to get it
Well,
out.
unfortunately, I don't live there anymore.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got it on your carpet, you just have to throw your carpet
Yeah,
out.
I know.
Seriously, because the smell never goes away
I know.
of fish.
I know, it was
But anyway,
awful.
what I was going to ask you,
Right.
as an expert on the subject...
Expert on the subject of what? Salmon?
Yeah, because you mentioned it. Why is there such a huge price difference between a tin of red salmon and a tin of pink salmon?
Well, I guess because red salmon is supposed to be wild salmon, I believe, as opposed to
wild
farmed
red salmon, yeah.
So it's more expensive to catch, more expensive to, to sort
Oh,
of
I thought it
put
might
through
be
the
a different
system.
part of the salmon fish itself.
Yeah, no, I don't believe so.
No?
No, I don't think so.
What? So why don't I just buy the pink salmon then?
Yeah, well, I think pink salmon is maybe the farmed salmon, which is which is not very difficult to catch.
But tastes the same as the red
Whereas
salmon.
the red salmon's slightly richer, I think.
Oh, I might try it.
But I'm not a salmon expert, so I can't tell you for sure if that's the case. That's just what I think.
Yeah, well, I might give that a try. But anyway, so on the tuna front, what I do with tuna is I put this into a big bowl.
Yeah.
Then I get a tin of the Jolly Green Giant corn.
Right.
Yeah, put that in. Okay,
Right.
I mix all that up. Right.
Tuna and sweet corn.
Yeah, that's right. And then
Have it with mashed potato.
I do have that with smash as well. Yeah, and black pepper.
How did I guess?
Yeah. No, it's great. I do sometimes have it on a sandwich. What I find with salmon and tuna is that it's okay on 2 slices of bread.
Yes.
Just about.
Like an open sandwich.
No. I mean, one, sandwich, a piece of bread, and then the butter and the salmon, and then a piece of bread on top. That's just about eatable.
Yeah.
But I like baguettes. And if you slice a baguette in 2 and then put your salmon in it, the minute you put the top on the baguette, all the salmon and tuna oozes out. And the minute you bite a baguette full of salmon or tuna fish, the salmon and tuna fish shoot out of your... they shoot out of your baguette.
Maybe you should drain it properly.
No. They shoot out of your baguette, out of your mouth, and all over the table.
Yeah, and then you have to move house.
Yeah,
What a nightmare.
maybe.
Absolute
so
nightmare.
it's not easy to eat salmon and tuna. That's what I'm saying.
No, it really
certainly
isn't.
not with where bread's concerned, because A, it makes the bread soggy. B, bread does not contain salmon and tuna sufficiently, like it contains corned beef. That's why I prefer a corned beef sandwich, because corned beef.
I think we've heard enough about your sandwich.
No. What I'm saying is, corned beef is an inanimate food, right? It's inanimate. It doesn't move. But salmon and tuna...
It doesn't move.
No, it doesn't move. But salmon
Yeah,
and tuna
if I tell you what, if
moves.
something's moving, don't make a sandwich out of it.
Salmon and
That's what I
tuna
would
moves.
suggest.
It moves. It's not a stationary food. Salmon...
Well, it moved when it was alive, when it was part
of course
of a cow.
it did, but corned beef is a stationary food, and it's easy to eat.
I see. I think I'm going to go for a lie down
Like
soon.
sliced beef.
After
I like
4
sliced
nights of
beef
this
in a
madness.
sandwich as
Now,
well.
what we should mention is that
Yeah.
we've got some more news on the
certainly have.
live show front, haven't we? Because we're doing one more live show before the Birmingham show,
Yeah.
which is pretty much sold out
Well,
now.
I mean,
we've got a live show coming up at the Head and Chickens in London.
We certainly have. A lot of people who are travelling to Birmingham from all over the country. Latest one was a chap who contacted us from Sunderland,
Yeah.
who's coming down and all that.
Yeah.
But that is now virtually sold out. There's 14 seats left for the Birmingham show, which we're delighted about. But we were asked whether or not we're doing anything beforehand. We didn't plan to,
No.
but we have been talking to our great friends at the Hen and Chickens in Islington in North London, and we are doing a warm-up show for Birmingham. It's not a warm-up show, it's a show because we want to do it on February the 20th, and it's at an earlier time than our normal show. It's 7:30, Friday, February the 20th, Hen and Chickens. The link to the ticket office will be available from this evening, from today.
This morning,
This morning, yeah.
Don't forget to follow the Two Mics at the Two Mics on Twitter and on YouTube. Just look for Two Mics TV.